Alrighty, let's start today off with GBP AUD. Now, when I told you that I'm up early, send me pairs, GBP AUD came flooding in, so it's the first pair we are going to mark today. Alright, now I still have a few newbies and a few beginners who are completely new to trading asking me, how do you know when H4 is closing or opening? So I'm going to give you a tip and a trick when I learn and how I'm able to travel and still not confuse myself when it comes to the charts, okay? So what you have to do is open the charts, go to H4, add a vertical line like this on the H4 itself of the candle, the recent candle, then you switch down to H1. From there, you will be able to count 1, 2, 3, 4 candles from the line itself, so then you will know how many hours has it been on H4, then you just basically compare that to your time zone. So for me now it's 11:22 since I'm in Vietnam, right? So meaning if this H1 closes in approximately 38 minutes, the next H4 will open. Meaning my H4 is at 12:08 p.m. Okay? So that's how, that's just a small tip for beginners who are still struggling with the opening or closing of H4. All right, so now we go back to H4. What is happening in GBP AUD? So GBP AUD, I have marked my sell zone. I have marked my sell zone up here, where the current price on H4 actually taps into the key level. So if this happens and it decides to sell from this point without retracing back to retest the key level for the next H4, let it go. Okay? With the trading, you have to be really, really patient and wait for the right time, because if you feel like, oh, if it's going to sell down, I might miss it, and you start selling here, and then it decides to retrace back, you will be floating. Okay? So better to wait for the retracement itself. Do not trade the potentials of the market, but trade what the market gives you. In that way, you will minimize your losses and maximize profits. Okay? Long term. So my sell zone, engulfing sell, meets an engulfing sell. Then we have my buy zone down here, which started with an engulfing sell that failed. And the process of failing created an engulfing buy, and from there we just had multiple buys. So we know that the buyers over here are quite strong. Now, if the price fails to break above this zone and decides to just sell down from here, buy from here, and it keeps going, it will just go in a sideways until one of the zones is broken. So either the sellers will be strong enough to push the price down and break our buyers, or the buyers over here were strong enough or are strong enough to buy up and break our sellers in this zone. Once it closes above and breaks this seller over here, we can use the key level to find a potential buy up into our next sell zone, which is a hidden engulfing zone. All right, but don't mind that. We're going to focus on the current price, the current situation first. So, current prices over here, what can GBP AUD do? Let me just screenshot this. Okay? So, GBP AUD, if this H4 closes in approximately 35 minutes, and it decides to close in our sell zone over here, or it decides to just play around in the next H4 in our sell zone area without breaking above, then potentially we can try to find a sell back down. But if H4 decides to close, take note that I'm seeing the closing of the candle. If it decides to close above my zone, then I will take it as this zone failed. So what would I do? I will either wait for the price to come all the way up into my next sell zone, or retrace back into my key level for a better buy up. Vice versa, same thing. If price decides just from now, because our H4 has tested the key level already, and let's say the sellers are quite strong with volume and everything with the new H4 coming in, if the sellers maintain the pressure and stop the price from retracing up into the key level to test it again, and it wants to sell down, then we just wait for it to sell down, and we wait for our potential buys in our buy zone. Okay? So like this. Because if H4 closes within the zone without breaking, we can try to find a buy setup up. But if H4 decides to close below, then it might want to test a lower area. Okay? It doesn't matter if it closes below and then still flies. No. When it comes to trading, stick to your trading plan, stick to the strategy. It doesn't matter what happens, but if you take the strategy strictly, if you practice it and you're consistent with it, you will find yourself taking less trades, being able to be patient and wait for the right setup and the higher quality setups to appear rather than just pressing buy and sell wherever and whenever. Okay, so be strict with yourself. Oh, wow, they just turned on a song. So that's for GBP AUD. Now, what do you do when H4 decides to close in 33 minutes and H4 is playing around in our zone? We switch down to a smaller time frame to find our setup. You basically find the setups that I have taught you, engulfing meets engulfing, or engulfing fail meets engulfing, or ABC, or HLZ, however you want to call it. You find those setups, wait for it to form before you press anything, right? To lower your risk, because if it doesn't form correctly, or you press prematurely and the price decides to go the opposite way, then you will be in loss. And that would actually just be gamble because you are pressing in a matter of trusting the potential that, you know what, because this is a sell zone, it's definitely going to be a sell. No. Wait for the market to reveal itself to you. Complete its setup before pressing anything. So since I marked on H4, I will switch down to M5 or M15, but I will always go with the higher time frame first. So I will switch down to M15 first to find my entries or my setup. If I cannot find any entries or setups in M15, that is when I switch to M5. All right, follow the flow. So we will write 4 entries. Okay, so that's for GBP AUD. Next, we have UJ. UJ. Okay, now UJ is in the middle, right? There's nothing over here. It's just waiting for the volume to either push it up or drop it down into our sell zone up here, or sell zone up here and our buy zone down here. Okay, so what can it actually do? Because we do have a high impact news on USD pairs, also GBP pairs in the afternoon, CAD pairs and USD pairs later in the evening during the US session. So be careful when trading. And if you are in profit and that pair has a high impact news, make sure to set break even. Excuse me. So what can UJ do? Let's screenshot it again. Same thing over and over. If it decides to drop down into our buy zone and respect it, then we try to find a buy setup. But if it breaks below, then potentially you might want to see a lower area. Vice versa. If it comes up into our sell zone and respects it, then potentially we can try to find a sell back down if H4 does not break our zone. But if it decides to break it, then we can use our key level for the opposite direction. Okay, now SLs. Again, a lot of you still refuse to place your SLs, and this is why you keep washing your account or losing more than you are gaining, or one loss can take all of your profits as well as a bit of your capital. Okay, so please set your SLs, as this helps you manage your losses. Because once it hits SL, you know that your analysis is wrong and the market decided to go the other way. You just have to accept that defeat, wait for the next opportunity. It's as easy as that. But it's easier said than done, so you have to put it into practice. All right, so set your SL. And my SL that I always suggest is 40 pips from entry. So once you go into a smaller time frame and it creates a setup, you press enter. That entry price, you count 40 pips. If it's a sell, you count, you add it. If it's a buy, then you subtract it. 40 pips from your entry, and that will be your SL. Okay? Last but not least, excuse me, we have AU. AU is also one of my favorite pairs. It's quite safe to trade, especially for newbies. So, sell zone, buy zone. My sell zone is comprised of an engulfing buy that failed. In the process of failing, created this engulfing sell. Current H4 is within our sell zone, but it has yet to test my key level. Okay, I'm only going to wait for a press, or if I decide to press, I will wait for this and my buy zone, excuse me, wait a sec, sorry. If I decide to press buy, I will only press if it comes down here. So what can AU do? Again, H4, wait for H4 to close first. Then we can try to find a sell setup down from the key level. But if the H4 breaks above, then it might want to test a higher area. Vice versa, if it drops down into our buy zone and respect it, then potentially we can catch a buy back up. But if it breaks down below, then it might want to test a lower area. All right? For your TPs, if you are a big tip trader like me and you don't mind holding for quite a few hours up until a day, then you can just TP zone from zone. But don't forget to take profits as you go along the way. But if you do not have the capacity, or if you are a new beginner at trading, then just take it something that you are comfortable with, or observe where you manually cut your trade, then set that as your first TP. If you find yourself cutting at 10 pips, then your first TP will be 10 pips, then you add from that 10, 20, 30, so on and so forth. Okay? I will update the pair from yesterday, and then I will post it to engulfing stock. But happy trading, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!